Good morning. Yes, it's been a while, but we're going to do a lesson from First Thessalonians this week on Plugged In right after this. And good morning on this Monday morning, the Monday before Halloween, coming up this weekend, Friday. And it'll be a wonderful day for the kids. The parents will love it, I'm sure, at first. And then, well, there'll be the effects of all that candy. And so looking forward to that. I'm sure a lot of the kids are. Hey, sorry we haven't been with you the last couple of weeks. There's been actually a couple of things going on. I've been sidetracked with something at our church that I was helping out with and wasn't able to get away. And then last week we had somewhat of a technical difficulty, and it wasn't anyone's fault on this end, but we weren't able to meet. But while I've got you in this introduction mode, I'm going to meet with you today. And then next week, and then there will be at least 2 weeks, again, that we will not meet. And here's the reason why. On November 24th, my wife and I will celebrate 35 years of marriage. And so as a little prelude to that, we're going to take off for a couple of weeks to the beach. And maybe the weather will be a little different down there than it is here. But we're going to do that, and so there's a possibility we'll be back on the 24th. If so, we will have a show. If not, we will keep you posted. But that's where we'll be the next few weeks. So today is a lesson, and next week. So if you have your Bibles, you want to follow along, First Thessalonians. I've been doing a number of different lessons, not only for you, but been doing a midweek study for those in our church. I've been intrigued with this letter. I had read it many times before, but had never made myself read it and slow down. And I think one of the things that intrigues me so much, and I've pointed this out to our group, is at least in the first 3 chapters of this letter, you can just sense Paul's enthusiasm, his affection, his love for these people. Just a real quick note, in Acts chapter 17, verses 1 through 9, that tells about when he and Silas helped to establish a church there in Thessalonica, but they were only there for 3 weeks. And I think that's part of the reason that I'm so intrigued with this is in a matter of 3 weeks, he had built such a connection with some that he could not get them off of his mind. And that just comes out so clear in chapters 1, 2, and 3. And I'm not saying that Paul didn't love the other churches that he wrote to, or that he didn't have fond memories or good relationships. He did. But it really is shown here. So I'm telling you that because in chapter 2 in particular, he reminds them of what they had to deal with in Thessalonica, because eventually Paul and Silas and Timothy were ran out of town. Not because of their theology, by the way, but because, well, the people really loved their message, and so they weren't showing up at the other synagogues, and that made the people jealous. And so they were ran out of town. And so then, but in 1 Thessalonians 2, he also talks about that before they'd been in Thessalonica, they had dealt with some suffering in Philippi. Particularly, they had been in prison. So he reminds the church of those things. And he also shares with them that, you know, hey, When they preached about God and when they preached the good news, it was real. It was authentic. It wasn't with flattery. They weren't trying to trick the people. They weren't trying to please the people. In fact, in verse 4, he said, we were not looking for praise from people, not from you or anyone else, even though as apostles of Christ, we could have asserted our authority. In other words, we had a message to give, and if you liked it, fine, and if you didn't, okay. If you accepted it, great, and if you didn't, that's your choice. But we weren't going to deviate from the truth. But then he says something in the next few verses that I want to draw your attention to, because for me, it teaches me as a minister, and if there's any other ministers that are watching or other church leaders, it teaches us how to deal with people and to disciple people and how to care for people. Here's what happens. Let me break it down. Verse 7. He says this, instead, we were like young children among you. Young children are energetic. They're full of enthusiasm, okay? But there's another E word that I want to use for you here that I think illustrates Paul. Children are eager. They're eager to participate. They're eager to serve. They're eager to learn. Paul and his companions could have had the authority to tell the people what to do. Instead, Paul and his companions were eager to show them what to do. In other words, they participated in it. They were part of the starting of the church. They were a part of the evangelism process. He goes on to say this. He says, just as a nursing mother cares for her children, so we cared for you. You have this gentleness of a mom. There is just nothing that takes the place of a mom's care. I remember a number of years ago, our oldest son, he was probably about 5 or 6 years old. We were down in the basement of our house, and he was acting up down there and messing around, and he was jumping off the piano bench, and he jumped off once, and when he did, he kind of slipped as he was jumping, and so he hurt himself. Here's what happens. He gets up, and he has one of those millisecond moments where he doesn't cry. He looks at me, and I'm sitting on the couch, and I said, you're good, buddy. And he just kind of looked at me with those eyes that said, yes, I'm fine. And then he just barrels up the stairs, and he's bawling, and he's yelling for mom. And I'm sitting on the couch going, am I just chopped liver? Okay. He loved Dad. Dad was there to help him if he needed it, but he wanted mom. There is just something about the nurturing of a mom. And Paul said, we took that attitude on. We wanted to be gentle with you. We wanted to be easy with you as a mom is when she's nursing her children. But then, here's the last illustration he gives. Verse 11 and 12. For you know that we dealt with you, or with each of you, as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God. Interestingly enough, we have 4 kids. I don't know how many kids each of you have or what you came up with as far as siblings, but I guarantee you, not every one of them are the same. We had to discipline one a different way than the other. We loved on one different than we did the other. And I point that out because here's what Paul said. You know that we dealt with each of you. In other words, how they dealt with one person is not the way they always dealt with another person. And so it was a personal relationship. But what they did is they dealt with them as a father deals. He gives them encouragement. He is comforting them. Hey, way to go. Nice job. Hey, let's keep on going. He's urging them. Don't give up. Always live a life worthy of what God has called you to do. There's a lot of different ways, and there are a lot of different books that have been written about how we can disciple one another. But I think one of the best tools is through the scriptures and seeing what was done in the early church. Back when they didn't have all the gimmicks and all the technology that we have today, it was a more personal relationship. We find out throughout the scriptures that leaders are looked at as shepherds, taking care of their sheep, looking after the flock. Thank you again for joining us this week. And again, we're sorry that we haven't been with you a couple of weeks, but we'll be back next week on Plugged In, and we'll find another lesson for us together out of 1 Thessalonians. Have a wonderful week. See you next Monday.